Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Oh, yes, bright and breezy in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, it's not like that around the rest of the country.
It's not.
Oh, there we go. I knew there was a voice inside there. That was John Beerley in the background there, who's been shoveling snow this morning, from what I understand, with your horses.
I have. It's 26 degrees right now in southern Indiana. I had to go out this morning and take an axe and chop a big hole in the corner of the pond so that the horses could even drink. The pond is just this massive sheet of snow and ice. We got about 5 inches of snow last night, and then tomorrow night we're going to get about 6 more at last forecast, but they think it could be more. So,
well, you know, John, at least you have a pond. You know,
I'm sorry?
At least you have a pond in your backyard.
That's true.
Well, mind you live on a farm, pretty much, don't you? From what I understand.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So I can't complain. Can't complain.
So, Ethan, how's the pond in your backyard?
It's one of two things. It's either a dust bowl, like from an old Western movie, or it's a flash flood warning from an old Western movie.
Well, we had flash warnings last week here, didn't we? I mean, 2 weeks ago when you were driving in Valencia area.
Bad news, and a lot of the damage isn't repaired. In fact, if you go on the news and actually look at there's one of the roads out there that was just absolutely mangled. Like it looked like it had just been ripped into like a circular Crazy 8 pattern. It's destroyed. But I was checking sandbags last night, actually.
Checking sandbags?
Yeah, just making sure we
checking
were all
or chucking?
Checking, because it was raining again, and that usually could mean
another dangerous thing. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're not used to it in California, are we?
No,
not really.
Not like he's got it.
No, you got your pond the hole in the floor. From what I saw this morning, we decided what it might look like, but we can't put that on there. But anyway, so anyway, John, I'm glad you're with us first thing in the morning. We've got a lot on the show this morning. We're going to continue our focus on education this morning because we've got our Surface Tablet Initiative, which is 90 new tablets into new classrooms. It's underway. They're being actually charged, and the 26 classrooms with 33 teachers across the Los Angeles Unified District are avidly working on their projects to win those tablets, which is going to be fun. So you can stay tuned in for more information on voting, which will occur between February 1st and February 3rd. You'll only have a very small window to vote, so make sure you don't miss those dates. You can follow the updates on this initiative at lausd.thepeacefund.org. So check them out right there. We talked last week about the issues children faced in classroom. We had Edward Keebler in the studio last week, a brilliant gentleman who is helping the Peace Fund on its on the advisory board and on certain factors. He told us about how he was abused when he was younger, and yet because of the fortitude of mind he had, he was able to go through that and achieve what he's been able to achieve on a governmental level even. And that then brought us to the poverty issues that we've talked about, which face our low-income public schools. And we're going to look into some of the shortfalls in our public school system in the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math studies. Here are some facts this morning. In the U.S., 14% of new teachers resign by the end of their first year. 33% leave within the first 3 years, and almost 50% leave by their 5th year.
Wow.
I want to know why that is. It'll be interesting to find out. You can tweet us on our Twitter page, which is what, John? John, tell us what our Peace Fund Twitter is.
You can find us on Twitter at Peace Fund Radio, also on Facebook at Peace Fund Radio.
They reckon by 2020 the United States will have about 123 million high-skilled jobs to fill, and fewer than 50 million Americans who are qualified to fill them. That's scary.
That is crazy. And I think one of the reasons, too, is among students from low-income backgrounds, 80% score below grade level in reading. And half of the 30 fastest-growing occupations in the United States require that vital math and science training that a lot of kids just aren't getting. In fact, our hero of the week is working on this issue in Ireland, Harry McCann. He'll be calling in a little bit to tell us about what's going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think those two issues are very important because, as we know, technology is key in our society today. So if you can't read and you can't use the technology that's in front of you, therefore you can't do the job that people require you to do. And that's scary because you're going to have, I mean, what it's going to do, supply and demand. Those 50 million Americans are going to be highly paid because there's not going to be enough people to fill those jobs. So it's kind of scary. You've got teenagers who express their interest in science and math. Nearly 2/3 of them actually say that they're discouraged from pursuing that because they don't know anyone who works in these fields or understands what people do in these fields. So I think that's another educational thing that they have to be told about. I want to give a couple more facts here, John. More than 30 million children are growing up in poverty. In one low-income community, there was only one book for every 300 children. We've mentioned that fact before. I want to mention it again because it's a very big fact to look at. 1 in every 300 kids can actually get or look at a book.
Plus, when children live in poverty, you have a higher number of absenteeism or kids who are leaving school altogether because they're more likely to have to work or care for family members. Now, in the past, we've talked to lots of heroes of the week who deal with this issue in other countries, such as India, for example. But it's hard to think of it happening here, but it happens. It happens all the time.
Well, from when it was asked, but two of the biggest problems facing schools, teachers were asked this question. There was, what is it? And they basically said over-testing and lack of parental involvement, which basically means the parents are not getting involved in their kids' education or their lives, which, it's tragic because I think, we've got to look at the problem when we're looking at standardized testing, which is the yardstick of measuring success. We've got poor schools. There's an article in the Atlantic magazine by Meredith Broussard, a professor at Temple University, talks about the trouble she was having about her first grade son with his homework. If the first grade homework was that confusing, she was worried about how he or any kid was supposed to figure out the standardized tests coming up in the third grade levels in Philadelphia public school system. So, I mean, think about that. I mean, if it's that difficult to do the homework's confusing. I remember the other day my daughter came home with this thing, and I'm like, how does this work? My wife figured it out. She's probably smarter than I am, but and Ethan hasn't even said anything. I gave him the opportunity there to actually open that up, but
it's not always about taking the opportunity.
It was
but I mean, again,
great restraint.
He was very restrained.
Mr. Dettenmaier.
Miss Broussard basically decided she would try to gain the third grade Pennsylvania system of school assessment, the standardized test for her state. So, along with a team of professional developers, she designed an artificial intelligence software to crunch the available data. And so she talked to teachers, she talked to students, she visited schools and sat through school reform commission meetings, etc. And after 6 months, she discovered that the test can be gamed, not by using a beat-the-test strategy, but by a shockingly low-tech strategy, reading the textbook that contains the answers.
Interesting. So the question, though, is then what does this mean for high-poverty students who can't afford the textbooks or the study materials? Philadelphia is the 8th largest school district in the country, and yet 79% of its public students are eligible for free or reduced-price lunches. So you have a problem like this in a place as big as Philadelphia, then it generally exists in other larger urban school areas across the nation. And one of these problems, which is shared by districts in New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, many other major cities, is that many schools don't have enough money to buy the books. The school district in Philadelphia recently tweeted a photo of the mayor handing out 200,000 donated books to kindergarten to third grade students. But, introducing children to classic literature isn't always a guarantee to raise low test scores. This is because the standardized tests aren't based on general knowledge. And as Ms. Broussard, who wrote that article in The Atlantic, learned in the course of her investigation, they're based on specific knowledge contained in specific sets of books, which are the textbooks that are created by the test makers.
So if they don't have the books, they can't take the tests.
Right.
Simple. So I think, although we're going towards the technology, a lot of the technology that we're using is actually based on written text that some of these kids can't get their hands on, which seems rather, strange. I mean, you've got across the nation, you've got standardized tests come from one of three companies: CTB, McGraw-Hill, Houghton, is it Mifflin Harcourt? I think it is.
Houghton Mifflin Harcourt.
Yeah, or Pearson. These corporations write the tests, grade the tests, and publish the books that students use to prepare for the tests. Put simply, any teacher who wants his or her students to pass the test has to give out books from these three big publishers. If you look at the textbook, that seems really weird to me. Okay. If you look at a textbook from one of these companies and you look at the standardized test written by the same company, even a third grader can see that many of the questions on the test are similar to the questions in the book. And Pearson actually came under fire last year, didn't they, John?
They did. They used a passage on a standardized test that was taken verbatim from the Pearson test. Used a passage taken verbatim from a Pearson textbook.
You know what's really interesting too, John? There is a difference in learning in different countries. In the United States, cheating is not allowed. Would you cheat on a test, John?
I wouldn't.
Ethan, would you cheat on a test?
It depends. What kind of...
Well, but you're right there in a sense. Depends because...
I mean, what's at stake with this test?
That's the point. That's the point. What's at stake? For these kids, you're looking at something it's their life at stake, their career at stake. So maybe trying to go and read the books, this is the same as cheating, because you may as well just read the book and copy it verbatim and you pass the test. Does that allow you to have more knowledge?
Well, I would like to learn the information and know it without having to cheat. But if you're telling me that like fate in my family hangs in the balance and it's Thunderdome and it's like a barbaric version of Family Feud, and if I cheat, I can get through it, I would consider cheating.
Well, you see,
you had the other direction. You had the case in Atlanta where teachers were cheating to basically to keep their jobs. 11 educators in Atlanta were convicted of criminal charges on a cheating scandal. 44 schools, 188 educators, 35 indictments. Some of them facing up to 20 years in prison, found guilty for lying to students, lying to parents, lying to the public.
Yeah, but that's true, John. I mean, it's a vicious cycle. But you've got some of these teachers that actually go out and spend their own money every year to actually buy books and information and tools for their kids out of their own pockets. I mean, we've actually got those numbers here.
Wasn't it something like 91%? I think of teachers had, if I remember that number correctly, had purchased items for their students out of their own pockets.
Yeah, we'll take Philadelphia as an example. They spend an average of $300 to $1,000 of their own money every year to supplement their $100 a year annual budget for classroom supplies, according to the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers survey. And in other schools, basically they get zero for textbooks. In Philadelphia, schools were allotted zero per student for textbooks in 2014. The 2015 budget, likewise, features no funding for books. I mean, they're outrageously outpriced. You have these big publishers making a huge amount of money. I'd love to get if any of you guys from those companies are there listening, I'd love to hear your point of view on it. What would be your point of view on giving out textbooks? Is there not a way to actually be able to incorporate your textbooks? We're going to be taking 10,000 books for first and second graders in the next year, and we're going to be taking them into schools, but we're going to actually utilize them to get the kids involved in reading these books. And it has nothing to do with their tests. It has to do with their reading knowledge and how to gain more knowledge.
$1.38 billion in revenue for Houghton Mifflin in 2013, 38% market share. I mean, when I was growing up, I remember that name very clearly. Most of our textbooks, I felt like growing up, were from that company, and that was 20, 30 years ago.
Well, we're going to bring up Hero of the Week on, but before we do, I just want to make another point. Last night I watched a film called 99 Homes. Have you guys seen that film?
No, I haven't heard of that one.
It's up for an Oscar. It's one of the contenders. It's a very good movie. The lead in it is up for one of the roles, one of the awards. But it's about the 2008-2009 crisis, how people were being kicked out of their homes, and how it was okay to pull somebody out of their home. If somebody had to make a living on pulling people out of their homes, they had to make a living doing it. But then the line was crossed when they falsified documents. And those documents basically said, it's okay for, these kind of people are making money on people's suffering. And when you have making that much money on books, is it tantamount to the same thing? It's not it's not falsifying or cheating, but in a sense, is there not a way to actually take corporations and allow them to also become part of the community? And at that point, they sell more books at the end of it because they're part of the community. The community looks up to them. Anyway, John, let's bring us our hero of the week because I'm fired up this morning. So tell us a little bit about Harry. John, are you there?
I am, yes. Very excited about today's Hero of the Week. We're going to do a little bit of globetrotting in this week's Hero of the Week segment. We're going to go to Ireland. As a young man growing up on the Emerald Isle, today's Hero of the Week, Harry McCann, felt frustrated that adults in government, business, and education weren't taking his peers seriously. Because when Harry looked around at his fellow young people, he saw confidence, he saw capability, and most importantly, he saw the results and successes they achieved on their own steam. And we see it on Peace Fund Radio every week when we bring in our Heroes of the Week. This inspired Harry to found something called the Digital Youth Council. You can find it at digitalyouthcouncil.com, which was only his first step in expanding educational access and leadership opportunities to his peers. And Harry is joining us today to take us on his journey to tell us how he does it. And I'm working on getting him on the call as we speak.
Well, as we do that, and basically we had the same issue last week when we had Edward Keebler on, basically on his own steam and his own power. As a child, he said, enough, I'm going to do this on my own, and I'm going to make something of my life. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to learn. He had a capacity to do it, and probably had a higher intelligence than some of his peers because he had the power of doing that. Do we have an issue here, Ethan? No?
I think so. I think we've got Harry. Harry,
are you there?
Hi, how are you getting on?
Hello, Harry. Good morning.
Hello, Harry. Welcome to Peace Fund Radio.
Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Oh, good evening. I mean, you're 8 hours ahead of us at the moment. What part of Ireland are you in? I'm
40 minutes or so outside of Dublin, so I'm not too far away from Dublin.
Oh, right. You sound like a friend of mine, actually. He's out of Dublin as well. So, can you tell us how old you are? Our listeners would love to hear that because we bring our young heroes in every week. So, how old are you, Harry?
Yeah, I'm 17 years old. 17,
and before we get on to the Digital Youth Council, what was your education like? What was your personal history on education? What was school like for you?
Yeah, so I'm in my second year of school at the moment. So I'm in your equivalent of high school. So I have a good experience of school. I go to a community school, so it's it's public. There's nothing too special about it. It's not private. It's not fee paying. So it's just very basic, yourself. So I'm 2 years left of school at the moment. So still going through it.
So let me ask you another question. How was your growing up? Were your parents involved in your education? Did you read books when you were younger? What was that like?
Yeah, I suppose I had a normal childhood, but my parents are very involved. They both work full-time jobs, but they're both at home most of the time when they finish work. So yeah, I have three siblings, two older siblings and one younger sibling, and it's a pretty normal childhood. I read books, I done all the normal stuff, and then I suppose a bit of techie on the side as well. But as normal as it gets.
It's funny you say normal, but a lot of kids today. You talk about two parents actually being at work, and that's one of the issues we talk about. They don't have time for the kids. They get home, they've got to make dinner, they've been working all day, they're tired, they don't take time with the kids. A lot of parents don't take time to read to their kids, and I think that's part of the issue we've seen, because some of the kids then get upset, they're not as attentive in class, and in low income areas a lot of the time those kids then start suffering and they don't learn in school, so they turn to something else such as drugs or gangs or something even worse. So and a lot of in the prison systems, a lot of the people, we found a high percentage of people in there were basically they couldn't read, which basically meant they had no opportunities in life and turned to something else. So
yeah, I suppose you're right there, and it's the same in Ireland, that it's the same here. It's all the time, and the thing is, I'm quite lucky, as I said, that both my parents are very, very involved in my childhood and still are. And the case is that I'm quite lucky that they took the time, even when they were working full-time jobs 9 to 5, they still come home and they still spend a lot of time on us. So I am quite lucky in that case.
So John told us this morning about the program. How old were you when you started to feel that young people weren't being listened to?
I suppose it had to be around 15, when I was 15. I think it was just as I was halfway through high school here, and the thing was, I was just kind of frustrated with the idea that my opinion or my voice wasn't as important as an adult's was, or somebody who's considered an adult here. And I thought it was just quite frustrating. And I think, from there on, it was kind of just an idea that I was like, no longer should I have to be an adult or considered an adult to have a voice. I should be entitled to my opinion and entitled to a voice, whatever age I am, and everybody else should be as well.
It's interesting. We had Sir Roger Moore on the show about a year ago, 9 months ago, and he said, when I was a kid, kids should be seen and not heard. And that's totally different these days. But I still think that old adage still works, or still applies, should I say, to a lot of people, and they don't listen to kids. And I think it's very important because it creates a lot of different... And I'm not talking about kids when they're 10 or 12 or 14 or 15. I'm talking about kids when they're 5 years old. Because at 5 years old, you're still now developing an opinion or an idea, even though it might seem pointless to us. To a 5-year-old, it's really important. So you've got to listen or at least address it. And I think, that then applies to the rest of being a young adult for the rest of that time until you become, what should I say, publicly known as an adult until you're 18 or 21 years old, depending on what country you live in. And I think, I think it's important to really listen to kids. I mean, what made you really feel? Was it the way they talked to you? Was it just dismissing you? What was that?
I suppose it's the school environment. I think when you look at schools especially, the idea is that, a teacher stands in front of a classroom of, however many young people, and they kind of tell them what everything is, and, that's what it is. There's nothing else to it. There's nothing more to be said, really. And, there's a certain amount of rules that need to be followed, and if these rules aren't followed, then end of story, you'll be disciplined for that. And I suppose from school, I think that's what annoyed me the most, and what still frustrates me is that although I'm entitled to my opinion to an extent, that if my opinion isn't the same as what the teacher's opinion, or as somebody older than me, then I'm it's not taken on board, or it's not appreciated. It's just there. And I suppose they don't like you when you question things. They don't like when you question the idea of a different rule or an idea of a different kind of thing they have in place in school. And I suppose that's kind of what was the most frustrating part of it is, and the most frustrating part of school is that although I'm 17 and in Ireland we consider an adult 18 years and above, I'm still not really entitled to my opinion because I'm still a child, or I'm still a young person as such.
Now, Harry, when you made that decision to do something to try to gain that voice for yourself and your peers, who did you speak to first?
So I suppose I went to the Irish government. So I went to certain people in the Irish government. So over here we have ministers. So the ministers are in charge of their different areas. So everything from health to education to skills to learning to finance. We have all these different ministers in charge of things. So there's a minister for children and youth affairs, which I did contact. But really the main person I spoke to was at the time the minister for skills and learning. Mm-hmm. And he was a man called Harry McCann, and I actually met him at a conference. I was invited to speak at a conference in Dublin Castle, and I spoke there, and afterwards I spoke with him, and we kind of came up with the idea that no longer should young people just go along with what's given to them, and that they should have a voice and an opinion on their future, and the things that will affect them in the future, so that we can prepare for them and make sure that we're not building a future that doesn't suit them and that they don't want, that rather they can be involved in building their future. So we set up a thing called the Digital Youth Council, and the Digital Youth Council works alongside the Irish government, along with other people as well, big businesses, big corporations, and we work with them to make sure that young people have a say in how their future is being designed and created for them.
That's fantastic.
Harry, you said you were invited to speak. Why were you invited to speak?
Yeah, so I kind of I started a movement over here, and the movement was called KidTech, and KidTech was to teach a generation about technology. It was to teach a generation about coding, about programming, about building apps and websites, all of the new things, that's the big craze at the moment in regards to technology. And I was 15 at the time when I set up the business, and really it obviously got a bit of attention being 15 and having a business. And then it even got more attention when I started to gain support of people like the British actor Stephen Fry and the hardware company and software company and BlackBerry. So I kind of got a lot of big names on board, and I suppose I was just invited along to give my opinion on young people and education at the conference.
So,
and to our listeners who would like to check that out, Harry has a Twitter page for Kid Tech at Kid Tech HQ on Twitter.
So tell us a little bit more about the Digital Youth Council. How did you get it started, and how many schools you partnered with, and what exactly? How does it work?
Yeah, so the Digital Youth Council is made up of some of the most promising young people in Ireland in STEM. So STEM, for those people who don't know what STEM is, it's kind of a bit of a crave at the moment, which is science, technology, engineering and maths. So it's kind of the umbrella they all fall under. So we've I looked around and seen how young people in Ireland are kind of leading the way in the area of STEM. So I found some really cool people my age and a bit older and a bit younger, and we set up the Digital Youth Council. So these young people have done things like the Google Science Fair, some really big competitions over here in science and technology. Some of them were in Times magazines, 20 under 20. So we had some big names, and what we do is we work, as I said, with the government and these corporations to make sure that they're working to make sure that there's a positive future being built for young people, and that young people can have a say all the time in how it's being made. And we're working with schools as well, schools and students all over the country. Ireland's not a big place, there's only 5 million or so of us here. So we're trying to make sure that we're reaching everybody and making sure everyone has a voice. So we partnered with a couple of hundred schools now in Ireland, and we're working with hundreds and hundreds of students all around the country to make sure that we're constantly taking feedback and we're constantly taking their views and opinions in, and that we're expressing these to the people that need to hear them.
How do you do that networking, Harry? Do you have volunteers at the schools, or how do you do the communicating and the networking with those schools?
Yes, so I suppose it's a lot of it's through social media, and so a lot of things like Twitter, Facebook, all the kind of big social medias at the moment. We work alongside the government as well, so we work alongside different government departments here in Ireland to put out schemes. So we have a scheme called the Schools Digital Champion Scheme, which really highlights those digital champions in each of the schools around the country, and gives them the opportunity to be kind of considered superstars as such in their schools, to be seen as not just nerds, but as kind of the up-and-coming stars of the future. So we worked with the department over here on that. We also have an app and a website which is unique to us, which is called Have Your Say. And Have Your Say is a website where people can simply just put in their name and put in their view and opinion, and we'll submit that into us, and we'll look at it and we'll address whatever needs to be done with it. So really, we have a lot of different resources and a lot of different things there and available, so that young people can get in touch and make sure that we're reaching as many people as possible.
It's interesting. You actually talking about STEM again. STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. In the US, it's becoming a much public debate regarding school curriculums and reform of those, because there's, in the growing economic force, STEM job opportunities basically they increase, and they're resulting in higher salaries. However, based here on a report by Georgetown University on the Centre of Education, along with the educational demands of STEM jobs, there more openings are going to be created in the near future. Now, that isn't a problem for graduates with a STEM field degree, but the US economy may face a limited workforce pool, because today there's 277,000 STEM job vacancies, and they're estimated there could be 2.4 million STEM vacancies by 2018. Now, that basically means the kids have to be taught these opportunities, and how do you close that gap for letting them learn that? I think what you're doing is allowing them to do that. Am I right?
Yeah, so, as you said, that there's an awful lot of jobs in the US in particular. There's an awful lot of jobs available in the area of STEM. So, these jobs are there, and they require people with a certain kind of skill and certain kind of skills to fill these positions. And in Europe as well, there's an awful big problem at the moment. There's over 700,000 ICT jobs available, so information, computing, technology, and these jobs are available, and there's nobody there are equipped to fill these jobs. So what I've set up is a movement called Let's Teach Code, and Let's Teach Code is a movement which we're basically trying to bring coding into every classroom around the world, starting with one classroom at a time. So coding, really for those people who don't know what it is, it's kind of one of those things that some people do and some people don't. It's the fundamentals kind of behind a website and behind an app. So it's the building blocks as such. So if you think about a house, when you're building a house, you put down the foundations and you build it up using blocks. With a website, you put down the foundations and you use code to build it up. So what we're doing is we're aiming to get one school in every country around the world in 2016 to start teaching code to their students. And we're providing them with the resources and tools and equipment that they need to do this to teach their students. And, hopefully the aim is that once we get into, it's 96 schools in 196 countries. And once we get into these schools, hopefully it'll spread from there. And, in hopefully less than 10 years, those jobs will be filled, and they'll be filled by people who are able to fill them and they have the skills that are needed. Because currently around the world and, in the US, I think in certain places as well, we're just not equipping students with the skills they need to fill these jobs. And, they're going out into a jobs market unequipped.
Don't you also think that there's the issue of the teacher shortage of actually being able to teach these kids? Because in the US, for instance, you got, and it's a report released by the United States Department of Education, the World Economic Reform ranks the United States as 49th in the quality of math and science and education because they don't have the teachers to be able to teach them. Which is, to find that. How do you find those qualified teachers in the STEM fields?
Yeah, I suppose it's a big problem, and that's where we really are falling behind. And I think a lot of education systems around the world are falling behind is because the teachers that we have there now aren't equipped with the skills needed to teach the students the skills they need to fill these jobs. And the thing is, it's a ripple effect. If the teachers can't teach the students, then the students won't learn and they won't fill these jobs. But I spoke to a group of Irish teachers over here. I spoke to 130 Irish student teachers here. So there's teachers that are currently coming into the system and they're new teachers, and these teachers are very enthusiastic. They've grown up with technology, they've grown up using technology, and they know how to use it, and they're well equipped with the skills they need to teach these things. And I suppose really that's why it's going to take a few years to get this working, because we need all the teachers currently learning to become teachers and studying to become teachers to be equipped with those skills needed to be able to teach the students the skills they need. And it might sound like a long process, and it'll take a few years, but the thing is, we need to start now and make sure that the teachers that we're training at the moment all around the world have the skills needed so that we can start teaching coding and proper maths and proper science and skills.
Mm-hmm. Harry, we've been talking a lot on our show the last few weeks about the educational system here in the United States. What do you feel are some of the strengths of the educational system in Ireland?
I suppose that, in Ireland, the system's open to a lot. It's everybody has an opportunity to learn. And I think it's a great thing. Education is available to anybody around Ireland, no matter where you're living, which is huge. I think we have very enthusiastic teachers here as well. I think that a lot of the teachers are very enthusiastic to teach and, for their students to learn. I'd hope that it's the same all around the world. I suppose, there's an awful lot of weaknesses to our system, and I do think it falls back to our Department of Education here. I don't think that it's properly run. I don't think that we're equipping the students with the skills that they need. And, it's what made me start the movement Let's Teach Code, is because I just don't think that, teachers are being brought down the right road and that they're teaching the students what they need to learn. And I can't really blame schools and I can't blame teachers for this. You'd have to blame the Department of Education. And I think it's because we've fallen behind and, we're 10 years behind when we really need to be preparing for the next 10 years. So the thing is, my system is the same that my older brothers had and that my parents had, and it's just not changing. And I think that's our biggest problem.
Well, there it goes. That's exactly it, though, isn't it? Really, I mean, we talk about this right at the beginning when you came on, which is people don't change their minds. It's the same thing of looking at a young person. We do it this way. You don't need to know or talk about it because we know what we're doing. It's the same thing. You have these people in government who are now past. I was talking about this about Facebook and Facebook for young adults who are 13, 12, 13 is old. You use Instagram and Snapchat for those things now. It's a different level of what you're used to. The same thing in the Department of Education. You're going to have people there that are used to a certain system and they're not sure how to change it. They don't want to lose their jobs. So how do you solve that?
Yeah, I suppose there just has to be reform, and I think it has to be reform right across the system. And I think we really need to look at what skills we're giving the students who are leaving school, and then what opportunities that gives them when they leave as well. So the thing is that the jobs that my parents were being prepared for 10 or 20 years ago isn't the same jobs that I need to be prepared for now. And the people in the system either need to get on board with the whole idea that it's changing, or then they do need to leave. And I know that might sound awfully bad of me, but the thing is that we can no longer accept that we're falling behind, and we need to start taking control of it. And I think a lot of people in the departments, in all government departments around the world, are willing to change, and that it really comes down to who's leading these government departments. So it comes back to who's the minister and who's in charge of these departments. And so the thing is that I do think they all are enthusiastic when they get voted in, and these governments get voted in. But the thing is that enthusiasm needs to stick, and they need to make sure that they're working properly. So I do think that the current people in these departments either need to get on board with the whole idea of change, or else they do need to move somewhere else.
Now, I think one of the areas that the change needs to happen is in testing, Harry. And I know that you had some input on Ireland's state examination. What was your input? How did that come about?
Yeah, so we have two state examinations here. So the two state examinations are the junior certificate and the leaving certificate. And the junior certificate is basically halfway through your high school learning. So we don't do constant assessments. And, each year we just do small exams, which have no effect on how we move on in school. And what happens is you do the junior certificate, and this is a certificate you have to say that you're halfway through high school. And then there's a leaving cert, which it gives a point system. So basically you can gain a certain amount of points to go on to university and college, and it decides whether you can be a doctor, or whether you're not good enough to be a doctor, or you're good enough to be a lawyer, or whatever it might be. So I had an input in the junior certificate, which isn't, as I said, it's not overly significant in regards to the overall outcome of school, but it's, gets students started in regards to their learning. And what I was speaking with the Department of Education over here, and what I advised them on, was the introduction of coding into the system and more technology into the system. So the idea that we bring our classrooms into the 21st century rather than leaving them behind. So that's was my involvement in it, and I'm hoping that one of these days that we'll eventually look at the leaving certificate as well, and we'll make those same changes.
And you've been doing all of this in about 2 years. This is what you said earlier on. You started when you were 15?
Yeah, so November 2 years ago. So yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
This is why you got to listen to the young adults, because you obviously have a very good vocabulary. Obviously, you were invited to speak because you know what you're talking about and you have very clear intentions on what you're doing. I think that's very important. What sort of impact has the Digital Youth Council had? I mean, has it had a big impact, do you think?
Yeah, I'd hope it would. The thing is that we just hit the year mark in May, so we're a good bit at it now. We're getting into our stride as such. The biggest thing that would have come from it is the school's digital champions, and it was a big initiative. It'll be rolled out all around the country into every school, and I think it was kind of giving those young people who are quite shy and who are considered the nerds and the geeks the opportunity to kind of feel more comfortable in themselves and to get more involved in their schools. And I suppose over the next few months now, our biggest thing will be our national survey, and it'll be quite a good idea of how Ireland's moving forward and how we're adapting to technology. So this survey will be conducted in every single county in Ireland. So there's counties in Ireland the way we're split up geographically, and we'll go into all these places and we'll speak to students in each of these places all over Ireland, and they'll get an idea of how technology is affecting their education, their everyday life, and then we'll go with this, publish this information, and hopefully it'll be a good idea of how we can move forward as a country, and it'll probably be our biggest kind of stamp on the whole IT and STEM movement in Ireland.
So you talked a little bit about Let's Teach Code earlier on. Can you just kind of tell our listeners really what it is and how it came about?
Yeah, so Let's Teach Code really was down to my frustration, as I said, about the Irish education system and how, we refuse to move forward and how we refuse to equip, a generation with the skills they need to fill these jobs, not just in Europe, but as you said, in the States as well. And what the idea is, as I said, we're going into 196 countries and 196 schools in 196 countries. And my biggest thing is there's a lot of movements out there teaching code. So, whether it's the Hour of Code, which is originally started in the USA, or, there's Code Week EU, which is a big week in Europe. But my idea is that I think every young person, no matter where you live, no matter what your background is, no matter how good your education is, that you should have the opportunity to learn the skill of coding. And, it really does give them an awful lot of opportunities, no matter where you're from. So we're going to every single country. No exceptions, no matter what's happening in that country, whether it takes us, the next 2 or 3 months to get into these places. And we're going to all of these, and we're going to speak to each school individually and see what equipment and tools they need. They might need €100 worth of equipment. They might need €5,000 worth of equipment. And we'll work with partners over here in Ireland and all around the world to equip them with the skill, with the equipment they need. And hopefully we can get the whole world to start learning coding one classroom at a time.
And I love that, Harry, because as you mentioned, just a minute ago, that you have coding seminars and events that people attend, but those are for people who already know that coding exists and know how to do it. And I like how you are bringing it to kids who don't even know what it is and can discover it. And that's a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
I also wanted to congratulate you before we go any further for being selected as part of the We Are Family Foundation's 3.Dash Summit for Global Teen Leaders coming up in New York. Will this be your first visit to the United States?
It will indeed, yes. So I'm visiting in March, in the first week of March. So I'll get to visit the lovely New York.
So
that'll be very exciting.
I hate to ask you this question, Harry, because we'll probably be on for the next 2 hours, but what is next for you?
What's next for me?
Yeah, it could be a lot. So we've only got a short amount of time.
That's definitely a good question. I suppose I'm coming into, as I said, the leaving certificate, so which is quite a big exam over here. I'm sitting that in a year's time, and it does play a big part in regards to what I go on to do in university and then as a full-time job. So I do have to concentrate a bit on that. But at the moment, as I said, we're rolling out Let's Teach Code, which will, if it works out, be one of the biggest education movements. And the idea is to get to 196 countries in 2016. I don't know, our days are ticking down. So we've only a couple of days left, really. There's a couple of 100 days left and a couple of 100 schools to get to. So the thing is that I'll be working on that. I'll be working on bringing the Digital Youth Council forward. We're hitting our 2 years in business now in May. So the idea is just to keep going slowly but surely, and then try and make my way through high school and then onto university as well, which is probably the biggest thing on my parents' agenda and my agenda.
It's really interesting because I always believe people. I tell people, what was your dream when you were a kid, and it's never going to be what you imagined it would be, because along the way you have obstacles or you have decisions to make, and sometimes it takes you into an entirely different path than you ever imagined. Was this the path you imagined for yourself?
No. I always want to be a politician, funny enough.
Well, that would be good for you.
Yeah, I found
in a lot of ways, Harry, you kind of are.
Kind of are, yeah.
Look at the change that you've implemented. You kind of are.
Yeah, but do you know what? I turned off the whole politician idea quite early on because I heard it was a thankless job. So I thought that, I don't think I want to be in a job where I'm being scrutinised the whole time. I'd much rather live a peaceful life where I can keep all my hair and I don't have to be going old very, very quickly. The idea originally was actually, funny enough, to be the president of the United States of America, but I finally figured that out, I think at 7 or 8, that you have to be American to do that.
Exactly, yeah, I can't do that either. Somebody voted for me, but I turned it down, But
I'll leave Donald Trump to do that one. Anyway, but and then I tried the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Also, that didn't work out too well, because although I'm able to, I didn't think that I'd get many votes. So I'm going to stick to the whole idea of IT and education for the moment, and if it leads into politics, then we'll see what the pay's like. But I might be persuaded.
Well, Harry, thank you for joining us this week. You've done a great thing in the amount of time you're doing it. I hope we can keep in contact with you and find out more about what you're doing. The Peace Fund's really kind of growing, and partnering with a lot of different charities around the world. So I want to keep in contact with you. But again, congratulations on being Peace Fund Hero of the Week.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Take care now.
Take care.
See, I think
Awesome.
I just think it's brilliant. 2 years. Listen to how he's been. I think it's fantastic to hear that. I mean, again, we've been talking about technology because we have the Microsoft Surface push, and I'd love to be talking to companies like Microsoft and Apple and all those companies to see whether we could come together and actually supply more of this technology for the kids in our classrooms, because I think it is very, very important to do these things. But as we said, we've got to educate the people that are educating, the teachers. We've got to make sure we change that. And as Harry said, it's at a governmental level or at a educational governmental level, if you like, that decision has to be made. And there is a way of doing it. In talking just on a couple of different things here, because we're getting close to being end of the show right now. We've got 45 of the 50 states and all 6 territories will post teacher shortages in STEM for 2014. And in 2015, this was a report released by the United States Department of Education. So STEM is having a little bit of issue here, and we've got to make sure that we don't fall behind, because as I mentioned before, the United States rates 49th in the quality of its math and science education. The differences in the amounts and kinds of learning that different teachers help produce teachers are vastly important. No matter how you measure quality, good teachers are not evenly distributed across all kinds of schools and students. Educators in predominantly black and Latino schools were paid less than their counterparts in the majority of white schools, and black students were found to be nearly 4 times more likely than their white counterparts to attend a school where less than 80% of their school's teachers are certified. So that's something else we have to look at, because, as I said, we're teaching the teachers. Go ahead, sorry, John.
Well, and two, I think a good thing is to give those good teachers the room and the support to do what they do. I have lots of friends who are teachers, who are counselors at schools, and they either have a lack of parental involvement or parental involvement in the wrong direction, where you have parents calling and complaining that, well, gosh, you're expecting too much out of these kids, or you're expecting my kids to, be accountable and responsible. And, I think that's just the wrong direction to go. Understand that your teachers are trying to make those, to make your kids' life better.
How do you feel about this, Ethan? Because, obviously we come from a generation that didn't use so much technology. I mean, how is it for you when you're dealing with technology like this? I mean, you were talking about your phone and stuff earlier on when we first came into the room here. How do you think this big technology is going to shift in the way that your children and our children really move forward?
Well, it's going to be like everything else. It's going to have its benefits, and it's going to have some serious things to worry about. What comes to mind actually is Wikipedia in this discussion, where technology can be edited, hacked, reassembled. So I'm curious to see how it progresses.
Well, John, do you have any other updates for us? Because we're running out of time again. Do you have any quick updates before we do that?
A quick reminder to all of our listeners that for a donation of $250, you can dedicate an episode of Peace Fund Radio to someone special, dedicated to a friend for a birthday, dedicated to the memory of a loved one, dedicated to yourself, because you're helping us protect, educate, and aid children everywhere. You can find out information on how to do it at thepeacefund.org. If you have any questions, you can email the wonderful Beverly Shahara at bev@thepeacefund.org. And as soon as I get off of the air here, I'm going to be talking to Kimberly Moore. We spoke earlier this morning, trying to get some things together for her Adopt a Light initiative. So there's a lot going on that we'll be reporting to you very soon.
Well, I just want to give one shout out to Citizens School, a charity navigated 4-star, www.citizenschools.org, founded in 1995. They operate a growing national network of after-school educational programs for students in the middle grades, 6th, 7th, and 8th. Their programs complement classrooms learning by engaging students in hands-on learning projects led by adult volunteers after school and supported by a staff of professional educators. Check them out online. We'll have all our updates, as usual, on our Facebook and our websites later on today. I want to finish today thanking everybody for listening. And Ethan, thanks for bringing us this. Bev for doing all the research. John for bringing us, as usual, all the information on our hero and everything else.
And a quick thank you to Harry McCann for his time today.
Absolutely.
He was really busy.
Yeah, it's awesome. This is from Frosty Troy, editor of the Oklahoma Observer. I like to think that the greatest success of any life is that moment when a teacher touches a child's heart and it is never again the same. Everything America is or ever hopes to be depends upon what happens in our schools' classrooms. This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll talk to you next week.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.